Right now, not next year, not after the next election. Right now, your money is getting smaller. Not because you're spending too much, not because you made a bad investment, because of a decision made in Washington that most people were never told about. And here's what makes that dangerous. The people who do understand what's happening aren't panicking. They're quietly positioning themselves on the right side of it. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why your dollar buys less every single year, who benefits when that happens, and the specific moves that shift you from the losing side of this equation to the winning side. Not theory, not doom, a real, practical framework. Stick with me, because once you see how this machine works, you cannot unsee it. Part 1. The playbook that was handed to you. Let me ask you something honest. When was the last time you felt like your money was genuinely working for you? Not sitting in a savings account earning next to nothing, not losing ground to inflation while your bank congratulates you on your 0.01% annual return. Actually working. For most people watching this, the answer is never. And that's not a personal failure, that's by design. For decades, the financial system handed everyone the same script. Save money, contribute to your 401k, buy bonds, trust the government, be safe. That advice isn't wrong exactly, but it leaves out something enormous. The same government you were told to trust with your financial future has been spending money it doesn't have for years at a scale that is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. In 1980, the United States national debt was $900 billion. By 2000, it had climbed to $5.7 trillion. By 2020, during the pandemic, it hit $26.9 trillion. And right now, as you're watching this, we are approaching $39 trillion. $39 trillion. That number doesn't live in some abstract government spreadsheet. It lives in your grocery bill, your rent, your gas pump, your paycheck, every single year. And to understand why, you first need to understand how the machine actually works. Part 2. How the machine works. The United States government has one source of income: taxes. Income taxes, payroll taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes, property taxes, capital gains taxes, sales taxes, tariff taxes, local taxes, corporate taxes, estate taxes, local taxes. All roads lead back to you. Right now, the federal government collects roughly $5 trillion a year, and you'd think if they're managing responsibly, they'd spend around $4 trillion, maybe $5 trillion, stay in the ballpark. They spend $7 trillion every year without fail. That $2 trillion gap is the deficit, and every year that deficit gets stacked on top of the previous years, becoming what we call the national debt, sitting at $39 trillion. Here's where it gets important. The fastest growing expense in the entire federal budget right now is not defense, it's not healthcare, it's not Social Security. It's the interest on the debt. 20 cents of every tax dollar you pay goes directly toward interest, not roads, not schools, not anything you can see or touch, just servicing the pile. So where does the extra $2 trillion come from every year to keep the lights on? 3 sources. First, people like you, everyday investors and institutions who buy U.S. Treasury bonds, lending money to the government in exchange for interest payments. Second, foreign countries, Japan, China, the United Kingdom. For decades, they have been massive buyers of American debt. Third, the Federal Reserve. And here's where it gets strange. The Federal Reserve is not actually a bank. You cannot go there and deposit your money. It holds no cash reserves. It says so plainly on their own website. So how does it lend money to the government when it doesn't have any? It prints it out of nothing. When new dollars are created, the total money supply goes up, but the real things those dollars can buy, the food, the housing, the products, don't multiply at the same rate. So each dollar in your wallet quietly loses a little of its value. That's inflation, not a theory, your lived reality. And right now, the conditions for inflation aren't easing, they're accelerating. In 2025, the U.S. passed one of the largest tax cut packages in history, cutting government revenue
while simultaneously increasing spending. More debt, more printing, more inflation baked into the system. Meanwhile, something else is happening that most people haven't noticed at all. Part 3. The crisis running underneath. Countries that have historically been America's biggest lenders are quietly pulling back. China has been reducing its holdings of U.S. debt. Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Japan, once a largest buyer of U.S. Treasury bonds, recently flipped from buyer to net seller. This is called de-dollarization. Countries around the world slowly distancing themselves from the US dollar because they have real questions about the long-term ability of the American government to keep paying its bills. But here's what's even more alarming, and almost nobody in the mainstream media is talking about. There is a second crisis happening underneath this one, and it could be the trigger that brings everything else to a head. It's called the private credit crisis. Here's how it works. Imagine you're a business owner. You need capital. You can't qualify for a traditional bank loan. Maybe you're too small, maybe your industry is too risky, and you're not big enough to go public. So you turn to a private credit firm. Think of it like a shadow bank, an institution that lends money to businesses, but isn't regulated the way traditional banks are. After 2008, when regulators put strict guardrails on banks, private credit stepped into the gap.
These private credit firms charge steep interest, 8, 12, even 20%, because businesses have nowhere else to go. And to fund those loans, they pitch investors, pension funds, insurance companies, institutions, everyday people. Give us your money, we'll pay you solid returns, you can pull out whenever you want. For a while, it worked beautifully. Then 3 things broke at once. First, many of the businesses getting these loans were poorly vetted. When the economy got choppy, they couldn't hold up. Second, interest rates climbed sharply. Unlike a fixed-rate mortgage, these business loans adjust. Companies that borrowed during the zero-rate pandemic years suddenly faced payment obligations they couldn't meet. Third, AI hit like a freight train. Many of these businesses were software companies, and AI eliminated their competitive advantage almost overnight. Businesses stopped paying back the credit firms. Credit firms couldn't pay back investors. Investors tried to pull their money out. And then the freezes started. One by one, major private credit firms began locking investor accounts. Blue Owl, Heirs Capital, Morgan Stanley, Blackstone, even BlackRock, the largest asset manager on Earth, froze assets. This is not speculation. This already happened. Now, here's why this connects directly to your wallet, even if you've never heard of private credit before. The same pension funds, insurance companies, and institutional investors who are getting burned in private credit are also among the biggest holders of U.S. Treasury bonds. When they need liquidity, when they need cash, they sell what they have, and what they have is government debt. More sellers of Treasury bonds means the government has to offer higher interest rates to attract new buyers. Higher interest rates mean the $39 trillion debt gets more expensive to carry, which means more money printing, which means more inflation. You can see how this becomes a cycle. Hello, I'm Ahmed Saber. I simplify money, investing, and success psychology for you. I make these videos because this information exists, but it's usually buried in jargon and kept in rooms most people never get invited into. That changes here. Part 4. The realization. Here's what I need you to understand, and I want you to really sit with this. Everything we've just walked through, the deficit, the debt, the money printing, the de-dollarization, the private credit freeze, none of it is a bug in the system. It's a feature. Every time money is printed, inflation rises. And here's what inflation does. It erodes the purchasing power of savings and wages. The person holding cash loses, but the person who owns assets, companies, real estate, productive investments, sees the value of those assets go up in nominal dollar terms. The working class loses purchasing power. The investor class gains it. This has been true for decades. It accelerated after 2008. It exploded after 2020. And the conditions driving it are only getting more intense, not less. Geopolitical instability, the AI arms race between the US and China, energy competition, military spending, social obligations that cannot be cut without political collapse. The government is going to spend. That is not a prediction.
It is the trajectory of every observable data point, which means more debt, more printing, more inflation. And if you stay on the sidelines, if you keep your money sitting in a savings account earning less than inflation, you keep losing, quietly, every single year. But if you start thinking like an investor, even at a small scale, every one of these pressures becomes an opportunity. Let me show you how. Part 5, the practical playbook. I'm not here to tell you what to invest in. I'm not a financial advisor, and you should never make investment decisions based solely on a YouTube video. Always do your own research. What I want to do is show you how to think like an investor, because the framework matters more than any single recommendation. Number 1, rethink what safe actually means. For decades, the gold standard of safe investing was long-term U.S. Treasury bonds. Lend the government money for 20 or 30 years, collect steady interest, sleep well. But in a world where there are genuine questions about long-term bond market stability, locking your money away for 30 years isn't safety, it's a bet. Short-term treasuries are a different conversation. They reset quickly. You stay liquid. You collect interest without committing to a decade-long horizon. ETFs like SGOV give you exposure to ultra-short-term government bonds, 3 months or less, tradable like a stock. You're not chasing growth. You're collecting steady interest and staying flexible. In uncertain times, flexibility is underrated. Number 2, understand gold before you buy it. Gold is having a moment, and a lot of people are jumping in without understanding what they're actually buying. Gold is not an investment in the traditional sense. It produces nothing. It doesn't innovate. It doesn't generate revenue. It is a store of value, a hedge. When confidence in fiat currency drops, when inflation rises, when the dollar weakens, gold holds its ground. It surged from 2008 to 2012 when the Fed was printing aggressively. It surged again from 2020 onward for the same reason. But here's the other side. When the crisis passes and confidence returns, gold pulls back. From 2012 to 2020, gold went nowhere while the stock market tripled. If you're genuinely concerned about inflation and currency debasement, gold as a portion of your savings makes sense, not as your growth engine, as insurance. ETFs like GLD give you paper exposure to gold prices without the logistical headache of owning physical metal. Number 3, follow the government spending. This is the mindset shift that changes how you see everything. The government is going to spend a lot for a long time. That is the one thing we can say with near certainty. So the question isn't whether to be frustrated about it. The question is, where is that money going, and can I be on the receiving end of it? Defense. Geopolitical instability is not declining. It's rising on multiple fronts simultaneously. Government military spending flows to defense contractors. Defense contractors are owned by investors. You can own them too. ETFs like ITA give you broad exposure to the defense sector. Energy. The U.S. is in a technological arms race with China, and the defining battleground is artificial intelligence. AI runs on electricity, massive amounts of it. The government is actively investing in energy infrastructure to stay competitive. Traditional energy, nuclear, and the infrastructure supporting all of it are positioned to grow. XLE gives broad energy exposure. URNM targets the nuclear sector specifically, and some of the largest tech companies are now building their own nuclear facilities to power their data centers directly. Broad market exposure. If you believe in the long-term productive capacity of the American economy or want to diversify beyond it, there are simple vehicles for that. SPY tracks the 500 largest U.S. companies. VEA gives you developed international markets. VWO covers emerging economies with faster growth trajectories and higher risk profiles. The specific ticker matters less than the concept. Every structural shift in where government money flows creates a corresponding investment opportunity. Learn to read the map. The closing. Here's what I want to leave you with. The financial system is not going to pause and wait for you to feel ready. The debt clock does not stop. Inflation does not take breaks. The people who understand how this machine operates are not holding their breath hoping you'll figure it out. But here's the thing that doesn't make the headlines. The rules of this game are completely public. They're documented, they're findable, they're learnable by anyone willing to put in the time. The difference between the person who feels powerless against inflation and the person who quietly profits from it is not intelligence, it's not connections, it's not capital, it's awareness. You just got more aware. What you do with that is entirely up to you. But if I were starting from zero today, I'd ask myself one question before I did anything else. Where is the money going, and am I on the right side of it? The next decade will produce more wealth than the last 30. That is not optimism. That is the historical pattern of every period of major economic disruption. The only real question is whether that wealth moves toward you or past you. Think about it.